We can get all of the shiny toys, but at the end of the day, an expensive chatbot that we spend, so many millions creating that nobody uses is an expensive demo. So the scale has improved. But with that scale, we also have the potential to introduce a lot more errors faster.
The decisions made by agents or by humans?
Ideally, it has to be a mix because agents don't know right from wrong. Doing is not the problem, it's how much risk are you willing to tolerate. Sometimes pilots work amazingly. If you don't have the maturity in your organization where you have security right, or you have all of the integrations to hook this up to actual data, your data pipelines, then this will just remain a pilot and you won't be able to operationalize it.
How do you govern without slowing the innovation?
It's not putting a brake, but it's providing lane markers.
Welcome to the Enterprise Cloud and AI Forum Voices, ECAF Voices. I'd like to thank Simform for helping me build a community around meaningful cloud and AI conversations, all things included ROI and the execution challenges. This is our first event. We're happening this live in Dallas. The whole purpose of this is humans first, but the bigger thing is we're going to touch on various themes, and one of the first theme is strategy gap. We've had all these AI challenges. We've had shadow AI, we had shadow SaaS, we've been through the cloud transformation, we've had data transformation, but still there persists a gap. And with this concept of the theme of having execution gap as a theme, we wanted to kick off and bring world-class leaders across United States, the North America, and the globe. And with that, we're very proud to have Shuchi Agrawal, one of my peers, my buddies, my friends, who's done a phenomenal industry, and I'd like to invite her to the stage as well.
Thank you very much, Rameshwar. It's wonderful to be here and hope to just share my insights and hope that this is valuable for the audience.
Thank you, Shuchi. So, Shuchi, I've seen you grown as a peer and a friend, and you had transformational challenges. And whenever I speak to you, you definitely touch on two things. One is you talk about the DFW airport, your passion for that, and then more importantly, how you brought transformational challenges without hiccups. So, would love to hear a little bit through your lenses.
DFW Airport is a place where I really grew a whole lot. And I really feel ownership towards so many different platforms. I was fortunate enough to create their airport operational database AODB from scratch, and we were actually one of the only airports, world class or international airports, to have done something like that. Other airports, whether it's Changi, Dubai, London Heathrow, they would buy their products. They would buy the Amadeuses, the Cetas, the Ultras. But we started off this journey under the leadership of an amazing manager, John Parrish. He was a visionary. He really had, he was far beyond his years. And together working with him, and I wouldn't say that it was all without hiccups. There were times when 2 a.m. in the morning.
Did you have AI at that time when you rolled out?
Well, AI is, I don't consider AI a new thing. I mean, AI has been around since the 1950s. And even with our airport, all the technology that we had, there was so much automation that we did. So whether you consider that, AI, ML, machine learning type of stuff. And even before that, when I was working for IBM and consulting for Morgan Stanley, we were developing lots of predictive models, right? So AI, ML, automation, this is something that I have done pretty much throughout my career of 25 plus years. But at the airport, the unique thing was the openness and the spirit of innovation. And even now with our new CIO, who's there, Michael Young's, amazing guy. I mean, he's always out there. He's always looking for things to happen better, cheaper, faster. So that spirit and that environment, it was almost like a startup. We did not have huge teams like the ones that I led later on at Citi and other places. But the whole culture of innovation, what it allowed us to do was understand the business problems. So it wasn't only about technology, it was understanding what problem we were trying to solve. In the early days, the biggest problem was the data. We had information coming from American Airlines, from various other sources, FAA. We were sending information to NASA. We were collaborating with them. So there was huge incentive for us to get the data right. The last thing we wanted was to put something on our FIDS, GIDS, BIDS, all of the information display systems, and it'd be wrong, and passengers just, keep getting lost in the airport.
Actually, I remember the days 20 years back when I could drive into the airport, and now it's a maze.
Right.
So I always keep wondering, and since you touched about data and I was always wondering, how efficient or how many challenges you had to overgo to come to the DFW airport. Like literally, I've seen it grown by leaps and bounds. It's just not a reflection of technology, it's data, the people, and the volume. But
Absolutely. I mean, just the digital transformations that were made, the investments that were made. We were one of Snowflake's first public sector partners. We moved all
interesting.
of our data into Snowflake 8-9 years ago. And this was before Snowflake is the household name it is today. Originally, our idea was, how can we get insights faster? Our regular Oracle database, what we had was not cutting it. We would submit queries, we would try to analyze this information, and these would time out. So our original objective was, how can we do this faster? How can we build a platform that can help us get data from all of these sources? And the airport, it's a very complex business. Planes taking off and landing are, I would say, less than half of the business. There's a lot of land in the airport. The airport, DFW airport, is bigger than Manhattan, all of Manhattan, right? So there's a lot of commercial real estate. It has 5 hotels on the property. 3 are owned by the airport. 5 terminals, a 6th one under construction. These are like giant malls. So all the shopping, dining, concessions, the airport would get a cut out of this. Parking generated a lot of revenue. We had natural gas drilling. We had life safety systems, our own police, clinics, all of that. So again, huge undertaking spanning so many different types of industries, from aviation to retail to finance, construction, all of that.
You mentioned all the business models.
Right.
I didn't know. That's interesting to know that.
Right.
I just thought it was pure airport just for us to hop on and hop off.
And again, the airport has huge ambitions. Other airports, they get revenue from the counties and cities to sustain their existence, because an airport is a crucial entity. This airport actually is one of the richest in the world, and it generates a lot of revenue for the surrounding counties. So again, hugely impactful to the region. And its growth from being number 10 in the world to number 2 is nothing short of miraculous. And it happened because of the foundations that we were able to lay, getting all of our data into Snowflake, having the ability to monetize our data, looking at trends when Uber, Lyft, and Wings, the TNCs came. They disrupted our parking business. But looking at patterns, doing clustering analysis, seeing that people from McKinney, from far off suburbs, they could easily spend upwards of $150 on a round trip ticket. But if we could sell unused parking spaces to them very cheaply, $10-20 a day, this would be untapped revenue, money that we could realize from spaces that weren't getting used anyways. And it would also be beneficial to the customers, because instead of spending $150, they can do a weekend travel for, say, $40. So again, benefits to both, but it's through these types of analysis that you can idealize. And we partnered with SMU, we partnered with local universities, UT Dallas, to do various analysis. Again, we didn't have the manpower, or we didn't have the funding of the Metas and Googles to get high-class researchers, but looking at our local talent, partnering up with the PhD students, the master's students, it would give them valuable projects that they could put on their resumes, and it would give us the benefit of world-class research.
You actually reminded me of a very strong thing, which I'm very passionate about: humans first. Yeah. So you actually use the power of humans to drive data as a business model. This is a perfect example. Speaking of humans, and still going back onto your leadership, and your passion is clearly reflected in the airport. What made you move from a financial to an airport to now leading the whole practice and another financial institute? How did this jump occur?
Well, again, I would love to say it was all planned, but nothing in my life has been planned. It's all, sometimes it's opportunities come up, and sometimes it's just learning to adapt and pivot to circumstances. So, I mean, going back to my really early days, I was a biochemistry student, right? My original objective was to go into medicine, do medical research. I would read Scientific American.
The
I mean,
CSIR, the Council
right,
of Scientific and Industrial Research.
right. So,
Got it.
so Scientific American, those types of journals were. I mean, that's what I was passionate about. I thought I would cure this, I would cure that. I would go into research, and I would be the best physician possible. So that's what my goal was. But in my college days, life happened. My dad got really sick, and I just had to pivot. I figured medicine would be a long path, and I may have to support my family. So I pivoted very quickly, moving on to computer science. Ended up doing a double major in software engineering and biochemistry. So that one thing led to another. During my college days, I was working full time in a bioinformatics lab. We tried to analyze various patterns to identify, the propensity that somebody could get a disease. So all of these types of things um, you know, s- um, just created more curiosity in me to be data driven. What can data really tell us? What insights can we gather? And after that, I moved to IBM. E-commerce was what I started with. I was one of the early developers for WebSphere Commerce Suite. And back in those days, this is before Amazon is the giant it is today. All the companies were trying to set up online storefronts, right? So whether it was a Nike, a big company like a Nike, or a small mom and pop shop trying to sell their goods and services, if they wanted to expand beyond their immediate geography, everybody wanted a website. So that's what WebSphere Commerce allowed them to do. And I, again, had a wonderful time being part of this huge global team working in the Toronto labs to create this massive product, looking at, marketing campaigns, how can we insert those, how can we do recommendations. So learned quite a bit about large-scale product development over there.
So, just adding thoughts to that, obviously we are in this age of AI, and we'll come back to this AI. Change management has always been a difficult topic to discuss, and it is still. 10 years back versus now, what kind of problems are you seeing in the change management? And actually, can you define change management? Because if you ask 10 people, 10 people have different answers. So let's start with the change management. And what did you see the challenges when you were 10 years back, when it was purely data and some level of AI, when now we are in this AI hyped up era?
Well, again, change management, I don't think much has changed in terms of change
That's
management
interesting.
because people fundamentally don't like changes. Change
Note
is
that point.
uncomfortable. Change is always, it's them having to shift their focus. So whether it was, I mean, if we go back to really olden days, right, industrial revolution, when people had to adapt to the new ways of working, everything that used to be done manually, now factories had machines to do that work. And then, automobiles were developed. So instead of people going on bicycles or horse driven carriages, now there were motor cars, right? And then even, in the 70s, 80s, offices, they had typewriters, right?
But don't you see that as a change? And why
Everything is a change. But the thing about change is, and effectively doing change management in an organization is understanding, what's at stake and what's the benefit. What's the benefit? What's the value? What's in it for people, right? If we can communicate that clearly, I think change becomes easier.
So we've been still struggling with the same thing for the last 10 years?
Well, I would say again, it's not just 10 years. It's throughout history.
Civilization.
Throughout history, whenever a change comes, we just have to figure out how best to adapt to it. So now with AI, Gen AI, all these things, a lot of companies are grappling with what does this mean for them. We keep hearing about layoffs. We keep hearing about people having to shift their focus, learn new technologies. I think learning is something that is a constant regardless of the time, the era, and what we know now, there will be more things coming out in the next 5-10 years. So the quicker we are to adapt and adjust, the more comfortable we can be and the more successful we can be. And even for companies adopting changes, if they can figure out a plan to communicate this to people in a way that does not make them feel threatened, that involves them, I think we can have a lot more success. So, whenever I have done large scale change management, and it's happened throughout, whether it was in DFW Airport bringing in Snowflake and telling others, our CIO at that time, he was a Oracle and Microsoft guy. When I mentioned Snowflake to him, he just kept laughing. He's like, "Are you crazy? I mean, what is this thing? I mean, do you want to make a joke out of us?" I said, this seems cool. Let's give it a try." And we didn't start with just the technology. We did a bake off trying to understand what business problem we were solving and what benefit we could get. And once we deployed it, we didn't wholesale mass deploy
Leave the
something.
floodgates open.
We did not do that. We tried a small problem and then we asked the business, I mean, is this working for you or do you want to go back to the old ways? And they were like, are you crazy? I mean, we don't want to go back now. Now that we have tasted the success, we cannot go back to the olden times when our queries would time out. So if you give them a benefit, if you give them value, if you provide a value, and if you involve them in the vetting process. If we had just implemented something and shoved it down their throats, they probably would not have adopted it. But another thing about change management is making people be part of the change process. Include them, gather feedback from them, understand their hesitation. So whenever you're trying to sell anything to somebody, you always have to look at objections. What do they not like about the solution, and how can you give them tools? How can you give them, the comfort that this is going to benefit everybody?
So this is a very good, interesting insight, Shuchi, and what I call is a human-centric model. Easier said than done. We've been talking of this human-centric model for a long, long time. But if you see the modern, I'll make it a twofold question. Now, in the rat race to move and make this $1 trillion or the multi-trillion dollar, the first thing companies are doing is, let's be very practical. Every technology company is laying off people so that it can save its balance sheet and accelerates its investment. There are other companies, actually, I met a couple of CEOs yesterday, and they talked very similar to what you said, so echo that. But the reality is you are now facing external pressures like the supply chain, the margin pressures, and the race to get into AI. Is this human-centric model really working?
Um, you know, I'm an optimist at heart, and I know that there are lots of challenges with mass layoffs being announced. It's uncomfortable for the people who are at the receiving end. And, companies are making the decisions they're making for some good reason of their own. They want to free up their balance sheet, like you said, to be able to invest in AI. So a lot of these layoffs are not even about, people becoming obsolete or them not being able to use the technologies. It's more about how can we free up cash so that we can keep increasing our share price, we can keep looking good to our stakeholders, and also have money to invest. And people are the most expensive, cost.
I think Microsoft, or what is it, Microsoft just said that after all their AI experiments, humans are more cheaper than AI.
Right.
So speaking of which, we'll talk about a topic which obviously we all love to death, AI. How can we not talk about it? Last year, even early this year, we said AI is a hockey stick era, AI is exponential, AI is the new electricity, AI is the new commodity. In the last 2 months, what you're seeing is, hell no, it's not that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Again, from that perspective, AI is not cheap, right? You have to have the right
So
infrastructure.
electricity is cheaper than AI.
Well, again, AI depends on power. It depends on a lot
Compute.
of compute.
Yeah.
It depends on a lot of resources. So, there are ways to use AI and there are wrong ways to use AI. If you use, the most expensive models, the frontier models, to do a simple search or get a yes no answer, that's probably not the best case for it, right? So understanding how and where, and when I think about AI cost and token economics, this is something that should be designed in your system and not discovered accidentally. So when we hear about Uber spending, all of their budget within a few
The first
weeks,
quarter,
right,
they blew up.
right. So all of these things, I mean, this is us discovering accidentally how expensive things can be, right? If you have even, I mean, any resources you have in your house, whether it's electricity, you always think about, I have to turn off the lights, I have to turn off all these resources when I leave the room because it's being unused. Same with AI. And funny thing, I mean, when we were implementing Snowflake, one of the first things that caught our attention was the ability to auto suspend, right? So this is something that lots of companies don't think about. And they think, oh, Snowflake is expensive, this is expensive, that is expensive. But if you understand how to turn on, turn off, and only use the resource when it's needed and design your system accordingly, you can use your resources very efficiently, right? So it's the efficient use and architecting your systems, your problems to use what's needed is the key.
So you remind me of a very good thing. The best 3S principle of reference architecture from AWS was secure, scalable, and sustainable by design. Sustainable means it's not just to the nature, to us, you design. So talking of Snowflake, which is a cloud model, and now we have Cortex and all, in the world of traditional world, which is you and I have been talking the deterministic world, you could put rules which are
Right.
deterministic nature, and you could say at this level, threshold, slow down, throttle down, shut down. But in the world of AI, given this frontier model that you are talking, it is not so linear, and you cannot put these rules because the more you learn, the more you realize you fathom that you got to go one step ahead, and then when you go one step ahead, you go to the next step. So those linear rules of auto shutdown work in cloud, and good that you bought it because AI needs cloud. So cloud needs principles, sound principles that you can do, but you touched upon, and I'll actually touch. One is discipline. You need the cloud discipline, and I think again we lost that cloud discipline for AI. And when you touched about tokenomics, and I actually put a blurb yesterday on LinkedIn, actually it's one of our CIO group that also touched it, is tokenomics is not that cheap, Shuchi, because the reason is, we've been telling, and I come heavily from the architecture world, we will put FinOps. When you put a model FinOps, and let's say you are outcome driven, which we all like to say, we can only quantify that, but realize when you put this model into production, you're happy, fine, and dandy with the outcome like a CSAT or an NPS. But for it to scale securely, what you need is a proper cloud strategy. Like if it goes down, I need a DR strategy. That is also cost. Now, when you put the model, you're doing an eval. For our focus, eval, you're doing the backward propagation. You're evaluating the model all over. To do that eval, you are again taking tokens. To understand your vulnerabilities, you're again using AI, which means again tokenomics. And to observe the whole posture of the model, you are now doing a posture management, which is again tokenomics. And to make this smooth, you have to upgrade your cloud, which is again a cost. So the true cost of deploying AI to me seems like a maze. It's like a battleground that I don't know how to fathom it.
Right. So again, you touched on so many different points, right? Starting from observability or starting from, creating architecture, creating the bare bones, the infrastructure, and then observability. So everything that we are trying to do here has a cost associated with it.
Right.
Right? Nothing is free, right?
No
But
free lunches.
there are no free lunches. There are no free lunches. But again, when you design a system, when you architect a system, it's very important to understand and chunk your whole system out into various components and see what is the most frugal way of doing something. For example, you don't always need the best frontier models to do everything soup to nuts, right? And even when you're doing, deployments, not everything needs to be in the cloud. Or if it's in the cloud, what is the smallest footprint you can be on, right? So, starting small and then scaling smart is an approach that has worked for me in the past. And even with this, I'm not minimizing all the different touch points where you are spending money. Everything has a cost associated with it. But if we understand, what is the bare bones minimum needed, not everything needs to go to a frontier model. There are cheaper models out there, right? You can do a lot with just rules based systems, right? So if I'm trying to
So
understand
not so glamorous AI.
routing, so it's not always about using AI. Use AI for the right things, not everything, right? Routing mechanisms, routing algorithms, those can be, very simple rule based systems that are not expensive. They can run on your CPUs, they don't need GPUs, right? And when you are solving a very difficult complex problem, then send it to a more
So
expensive
you
model.
kind of use a model routing
Yes.
orchestration, and you look at the intent and then transfer it to a local CPU or take it to a frontier model.
Right. And
Isn't it the same as what we did with our cloud orchestration, like S3 and the DNS?
it's all the same. So again, just because we have these super powered models now, Anthropic released
Fable 5 came.
right? That has huge potentials, and its power comes in its ability to do a lot more autonomous development, right? It can look at complex workflows. It can span through a lot. It can span through very complex problems in a in a in a short amount of time, right? So the scale has improved, but with that scale, we also have the potential to introduce a lot more errors faster, right?
Actually, I was driving and I was listening to the kind of complaints on Fable because it's been guarded so much. So if you ask a question on science, it's actually jumping to Claude 4.8. And then even basic questions, it's not answering because they put so many circuit breakers on it
Right.
that the power and efficacy of Fable 5 is not being felt. And there's a huge, I think, whiplash on what they're saying. But hopefully we get to see this.
Right. So some of those guardrails could have been implemented from a cost savings perspective. Some of them could have been implemented because of nuances. If it reasons a lot, can it go into territories which are that we want to
I
stay
got it.
away from? So there are lots of nuances associated with.
So this is a very interesting conversation. And speaking of Fable, what do you use? Claude, Opus, Codex?
I use everything. I mean, Codex has its own benefits. If I'm looking at just token economics, Codex sometimes is cheaper than Claude for certain use cases.
By the way, we're not endorsing any vendor.
Yeah, we're not. Again, I am open to everything. It's not the model, and I would say the best companies who are developing the most robust solutions, they should stay away from a particular vendor. So models will keep changing, and just like Fable came, there will be more powerful models in the future. So design your architecture so that you can switch between models very quickly. If something happens to Anthropic or they decide to remove something, you don't want your whole solution failing because you're only tied to that particular model or a particular vendor. So design your architecture in a way that you can easily swap models. And even with cloud solutions, when we were at DFW or at Citi, I mean, the strategy always is being cloud agnostic, right? Being vendor agnostic. Design your architecture the best way possible so that whenever the need is, and it gives you it gives you the ability to get better pricing from these vendors. If you're tied to a single vendor, you know that you have given them all the keys to your
They
kingdom.
have the power.
They have the power, right? You cannot negotiate better features. You cannot negotiate better contracts. But if they know that they have competition, then you are bound to get better service. So it protects you as a customer.
Interesting. So, Shuchi, it's great you shared so many insights. You've led transformation in data, AI, the speed with which models are coming, and consumers are pretty happy embracing it. But when it comes to enterprises, it's not easy because there's a whole infrastructure with your business process, your data systems. How have you seen the transformational journey, walk us through some of like what's been the speed? In traditionally, there was something when COVID came. Who did a digital transformation? We said it's COVID because things that we never fathomed suddenly came to reality with COVID. Now with AI coming, how are you walking through as a leader? From a challenges, from a business. We used to do traditional budget planning annually. Now we don't have the bandwidth. So let's peel the onion layer of how you are accelerating transformation to cope up with this speed of AI era.
Um, it's definitely challenging. It's not easy. I think all companies are trying to think about what is foundationally necessary. You cannot start any transformation program without having the right foundations. So there is, to get to a benefit, a business benefit, you have to do some initial investment, right? So all companies, at least the companies I have worked with, they have tried to understand what is that minimum. And unfortunately, some companies are laying off people to free up budget to do that foundational investment. But if I look at some other companies like Nvidia, right? I'm a huge fan of Jensen Huang. I think he's an amazing leader, and he has said so many times that you don't need to lay people off. There is more than enough work for everybody, right? But to start with anything, if you're trying to mass scale, all the investments that you need to do upfront, figure out what that can be, right? And it's no different than your traditional budgets. Like when we were setting up cloud infrastructures or thinking about migrating on-prem to cloud, there was a base investment needed,
Cloud was a multi-year expansion,
right?
and we learned through the journey. Like we never had FinOps in the beginning. We never did tagging, but then and now it was a lift and a shift until we refactored that. But that was a journey that we went through, and it felt to me a little bit of accelerated evolution.
Right.
But in this AI era, this is not an accelerated; it's an exponential evolution.
I think it's exponential if you think about it that way. I think the same principles of laying the right foundation still apply.
Agreed.
Right? If you just, if you bring in all the cool technologies in a large enterprise, and I don't think smart enterprises or responsible enterprises are doing this. They're being very careful about what they invest in and how they roll things out. There is a real need for AI governance also, right? You need to make sure that if you are making something available, whether it's Copilot or Claude or Gemini or any capability to your regular population, to your staff, and your employees, that you have the proper guardrails, and it's not putting a brake, but it's providing lane markers to people as they drive along this journey, right? So you need to make sure that if say a company adopts Copilot, they're they have a, they have sufficient data loss prevention guidelines. They're not leaking their data outside, right? A lot of enterprises have closed down ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. So, if I'm in my office environment, I cannot access these tools freely. I can only
So what do you
access.
do?
So I can only access the Copilot that's been officially sanctioned to us, right? So those are the types of guardrails. So disable people, and you can teach them. If somebody takes company information and puts it in some of these tools, that's prohibited. So you have acceptable use policies, and you have to enforce them. There have to be teeth associated with them. Right? So some of these guardrails are important, and it's key to have risk compliance, legal, all of these be part of your governance council.
So walk me through your governance model that you have.
Right. So we have a governance council which is comprised of a multidisciplinary team. So you have
Stakeholders,
legal, you have CISO, you have security, compliance, risk. Everybody has a seat at the table. Whenever use cases are discussed, it goes through this committee, and they do the due diligence to see whether this use case will introduce more risk, what are the guardrails that we need to have, and if they are if they are comfortable with the information that's been provided, then they approve the use case, and then we start on
So
the
is the use
development.
case an outcome driven or purely, you know, we need to have it too?
I mean, every use case has to have a business value associated with it. So use cases are not, this technology is cool, so we're going to bring it in. That's not acceptable. That use case will never pass. Each use case has to have a business benefit. So what is the business problem I'm trying to solve? How is it being solved right now? What is the repercussion of not doing it? And if I introduce AI, then what benefits will I provide? And benefits could be in terms of revenue generated. It could be cost savings. It could be time saved. It could be customer satisfaction or some capability that we were not able to do before that this use case can provide. So along those dimensions.
So for your internal productivity, do you use something like an AI SDLC tools as well?
Right. So again, we are starting along this journey. We're not all that mature, but there are things in place. So GitHub Copilot has been in place for some time. When I was at Citi, I mean, there were a lot more things going on. Devin was rolled out. Devin is,
The completely AI-driven code,
it's
automatic.
it's your AI assistant.
It's actually a beast.
Right.
You can write the whole code of a full stack as long as you know the prompt.
Right.
And speaking about that, you said about you put the blinders and you put the lane dividers and all. This is a big question that everybody's asking themselves is, how do you govern without slowing the innovation? Second thing is AI is moving faster, governance is way behind. So you just give me an example that you allow certain tools, you have DLP, DSPM, and whatever. But today it's ChatGPT, tomorrow is Copilot. If we restrict the tools, now developers want to have their free choice of and have flexibility. This change management does have an impact. Like, yes, you want to make sure that everybody is in the vision and the mission of the company, but then everybody has a motto. So something I've read when I did my master's, and this is my organization behavior 101, is 99% of human beings crave for one thing, which is recognition, aka what's in for me. So how do you make sure your developers, your business users get what they want, but at the same time you put the guardrails, basically accelerating innovation with safety?
Right. So, at home, I have all kinds of tools. So if I want to innovate, I want to play around, and a lot of our development team members also, they have all kinds of things that they can try at home to learn, right? So learning is something that I believe it's a benefit for organizations to promote learning. We have access to LinkedIn Learning. We have access to tools like Pluralsight, which give you sandbox environments you can play around with. So again, learning, innovating. You said, what's in it for me? I know everything about everything, or I can learn everything, and I have the power to be able to create things and bring good ideas. I think that spirit of innovation should always be promoted and encouraged.
So do you celebrate failures in your company?
Well, I personally always do. And I tell my kids also, whether you pass or fail, we'll go out for ice cream anyways.
That's
right? So, and
next
even
time let me know. I'll join for the ice cream.
anytime. And even with, within my teams, when I have led large teams, one thing that I really appreciated was, starting off any meeting with celebrations, right? Celebrating not just wins, but celebrating things that we learned, celebrating how each other helped out, right? So that creates a good culture. And then having retrospectives, whether you do it after every sprint, whether you do it after, monthly, quarterly, whatever makes sense for you, be able to understand, what worked well, what didn't go so well, and how can we improve in the future. Having this lens allows us to not just appreciate things that went well, but also look at, yes, this was a problem. These are things that we can do better, and always put action items around them. Because saying, yes, this did not go well, but oh well, what can we do? Our hands are tied. It's a bureaucracy around here. It's not very, it does not help much, right? In large corporations, there is a level of, control. There is
Resistance.
resistance, and for good reasons. They don't want to end up in the Wall Street Journal for the wrong reasons, right? So, but what can we do to ensure that we're not creating harm? What can we do to make sure that we're always promoting open dialogue, transparency amongst our teams? So, as much as I have, I have in within my power, I try to promote healthy dialogues. I try to promote transparency, and it's best if people have the ability to raise concerns and figure out issues before they happen. In teams where people are always afraid, they're always afraid of speaking up, they're afraid of their ideas getting shut down. Problems happen, they fester, failures happen, but you don't find out until much later, and then it's very expensive to fix. If we have an open culture where we can talk about issues, we can learn to agree to disagree respectfully, and we can challenge each other's assumptions regardless of the power hierarchy. Within my teams, I say, if I'm the boss, you know I still want to learn. I want you guys to help me become smarter, right? And the way I become smarter is by being open to hearing ideas. If I think I know everything and I have nothing to learn, I'm not going to grow. I want everybody in my team to understand that we have a lot to contribute, but we also don't know everything, right? So within our teams, if we can,
So you're making sure the vision and the mission of the leadership is propagated to your teams.
right. So as much as possible, as much as in my control, I can influence my peers. I can influence upwards by showing them this behavior if they appreciate it. But sometimes you're able to, sometimes you're not. But again, within your power, within your purview. I mean, we can say anything about the people up above, or senators, politicians, all of that. But change always starts with us. Right?
So that's interesting. For a later day, we'll talk of how to influence without power and authority. So this is great example. So talking a little bit about, we talked of change management. We touched a little bit of Snowflake and all. What are the cool things that with AI that you are now doing within your organization as an individual, and how are you dealing with them?
Right. So again, with financial organizations, sky's the limit. If you look at pretty much any process, if it's loan originations, or if I look at early warning indicators, we have the trading desk that is looking at spreads, and they do lots of decisions, and they're always looking at what is the right high and low that I can work with, based off of all the news that is coming, right?
It's a sub-second decision, right?
It's a sub-second decision, and you don't have a lot of time. And looking at all of the reports and analysis, it's very time consuming. But if you have an AI reading early warning indicators, analyzing what's signal from the noise, then you can immediately make decisions, and you can make decisions quicker. You can have tighter spreads, and you have the ability to increase your profits,
Are
right?
the decisions made by agents or by humans?
Well, again, ideally it has to be a mix. Let the agents do what they're good at doing, analyze tons and tons of information, give you the signal from the noise, give you the right insights, and then have humans make the right decisions as to whether this makes sense or not, right? Because agents don't know right from wrong, right? Agents can
But
only,
we are talking in this world of semi-autonomous to autonomous.
right.
Don't you think they have the intelligence? Because today agentic AI has reasoning power. Can't it look at the min and the median and look at the upper and the lower
it
bands?
can it can do all of that, right? So doing is not the problem. It's how much risk are you willing to tolerate, right? If it makes a bad decision, do you want to completely give that agent the
Power to
power to do everything autonomously, or do you still want to have this level of governance from a human that says, this makes sense, I approve, go ahead. Now, it also depends on how risky a decision is. For some things like productivity, if I'm asking an agent to summarize my emails and jot down appropriate responses so that it saves me all this time, that is a low risk task, right?
So that you make it kind of semi-autonomous to
Right.
autonomous.
Right. So
Makes sense.
things that are productivity hacks. If I'm doing spam filtering, yes. If I get one more extra email, um, that is that
One less headache.
right. It's not a do or die type of a situation. But if I'm dealing with healthcare, where people's lives are at stake, or financial decisions,
Transactions.
transactions. I mean, no customer wants to lose even $5 from their bank account because an AI made an error.
That's interesting. So how are you on your journey to a semi-autonomous or the so-called autonomous mode?
It's not very fast. Again, being in a regulated industry,
Got it.
there are so many guardrails, there are so many nuances associated with it. So always proceeding cautiously, and I always think about risk and rework, right?
I
So
thought risk and reward. You're saying rework. Got it.
rework. So by moving fast, I can develop something very, very quickly. Something that would take years, I can develop in a few weeks. But the thing is, what is the repercussion, or how much rework would I have to do if it uses wrong data, if it uses bad data, right? If we set the foundations right, I mean, with any project, there are always four things that are risks, right? The first is understanding the wrong problem, right? Am I bringing AI just for the sake of AI? Claude Cowork is amazing. I can do so many things with it. I can let it just run and rip.
It's
And
a new McKinsey or BCG agent for you.
absolutely, I don't need any of those, really expensive consultants. I can just have it create my pitch decks. I can have it do pretty much anything, right? Give me SWOT analysis. All of these things, I don't need to hire expensive consultants to do any of this work. But if I'm just looking at technology and not doing the business problem, thinking about the business problem that I'm trying to solve, I'm losing, right? We can get all of the shiny toys, but at the end of the day, an expensive chatbot that we spend so many millions creating that nobody uses is an expensive demo, essentially, right? So the problem is very important. And then comes the data foundations, right? With Fable, especially, really high-powered models like these, if we let them run on bad data, all we are doing is accelerating the number of issues and problems that we have, right? So a really fast, super fast model or a super fast agent will, I mean, if I let it run on bad data, it will create
Garbage in, garbage out.
garbage in, garbage out, right? So it will just accelerate my errors, which I don't want. I have a bigger mess to fix up, right? And then
And you being in the regulated industry, you are subject to a lot of regulations and
fines
laws.
and reputation
So-
laws. So there are some pretty bad repercussions of it.
So you prefer to be steady like the hare versus the rabbit
Well,
or the turtle.
right. So again, some mindfulness is very important, right? And it doesn't have to be very, very slow, but understanding what is the right problem I'm solving. Do I have the right foundations? And then also understanding what it takes to go from a POC or pilot to production. Sometimes pilots work amazingly, right? You
Yes.
can show lots of things, but if you cannot hook this up, if you don't have the maturity in your organization where you have security right, or you have all of the integrations to hook this up to actual data, your data pipelines, then this will just remain a pilot and you won't be able to operationalize it. And then the fourth part is adoption, right? Sometimes you can have the best tool, you can solve the right problems, you can have the right foundations, and you can operationalize something, but people are still hesitant to use it. You brought up change management, right? You
Quite a
have
bit of it.
you have the best tools, but people still don't want to adopt it. They're comfortable using their spreadsheets to do everything, right? How do you fix that? You have to show them what's in it for them. You have to show them that yes, this won't take up your jobs, but this will free up your time to do more impactful work, right? Things that you used to maybe remember, not remember. You don't have to worry about that, right? This is an assistant. It's like washing dishes by hand or having a dishwasher, right? Use this as your dishwasher. All you have to do is load the dishes and it will do the work for you. Now, if it could unload and put all the dishes back in the shelves, also it'd be
That's cool.
fantastic. But
You have Tesla's Primus doing
there
the
you-
stuff for you, right?
there you go.
So we're coming at the fag end. So Shuchi, where do you see the future from now, from your individual perspective and from the regulated industry?
So again, the future is yet to be seen. I think uh, there definitely is a need for organizations to understand how to deploy AI responsibly. There is a lot coming from the U.S. Treasury. They just passed another revision, and then if you look at the risk management framework, if you look at other regulations like the EU AI Act, there are so many things coming at us. I would say again from just the US's perspective, we have been a little more relaxed than some of the other agencies out there. Uh, but I mean, the problem is real. We don't want to just stretch our limits and then find out something went wrong or something was developed that hurts a person or created mayhem. Right? We don't want to find out from these kinds of events happening, right? It'd be best if we can be proactive, if we can design responsibly and look at all the different, all the different things that could go bad, right? And having a mindset, having a security mindset is also very important, right? Just like we have AI for good, there are so many nefarious actors. We hear about deep fakes, we hear about scams happening. So, how do we protect ourselves? Prompt injections, designing our systems appropriately to monitor, observe against drift, monitor, observe against all these, deviousness that could happen is very important.
That's good. Shuchi, again, if I were to wrap it up, you're saying be safe, be secure, be responsible, and more importantly, be a human first.
Yes.
Shuchi, it was great talking to you. And again, thanks to Simform for making this a reality. Appreciate you, Shuchi. A lot more conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rameshwar.